Hi, welcome to Smith and Grezzy. We've got a very, very special guest. It's the second time we've had him along, but this time he's got the letters MBE after his name. A very massive welcome back to Smith and Grezzy, Duncan Beckley MBE.
Welcome, mate. Thank you very much indeed.
I've got to say, Duncan, we're very proud of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still on cloud nine a little bit about it. I think the really interesting thing was 5 weeks ago when I got the letter. Ever since then, I've been hunting around to see who might have nominated me, and I can't find whoever it is, or whoever it is. I just can't see it at the moment. I just can't see it. But it's absolutely fantastic, and I'm so pleased. But the way I look at this is for everybody in banding. It's not just for me. This is for everybody.
It's for you. It is for you, mate. It is for you. You have done more than just about anybody else I can think of. You know.
Well, that's the way I look at it.
It's a full lifetime's work, Duncan.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Will you ever find out who's nominated you?
I'm sure it'll come out in time, but there's nobody owning up to it yet. So.
I don't know. Well, you'll have a lovely time when you go to receive your honour. So, like I say, we're really pleased for you, Duncan. It couldn't have gone to a more deserving person in my book.
Absolutely. I was trying to think what MBE stands for. Major Banding Expert. There you go.
This week's topic is choosing an own choice test piece for your band.
Yeah.
So, Sandy, do you want to kick us off with this?
Right. Okay. I just thought this was quite a good one. Now we're past the areas and we're into the summer. I know we'll be doing summer concerts and stuff soon, but we're then into the sort of own choice test piece contest season towards the back end of the year after we get through Cheltenham and the Albert Hall and stuff. And then there's all these various contests. There have been a few already, and they have already thrown up this year a few things to talk about. Let's put it that way. But I thought we'd have a look at these. How do you go about choosing an on-choice test piece? Because there are various ways of looking at it. And I made a little list here of just things to kick us off. So one of the things that obviously happens is that once we've done the areas, bands are keen to sort of make more use of the work they've put in to that. So they give another run out to their area piece in some on-choice test pieces contests. Now, to me, there's good and bad with that. The thing that ties bands down straight away then is that if you go to, say, for instance, a band has gone and played High Peak in a contest in April or May or whenever, there's a really good chance that band has performed that test piece as a first section band at the areas about 6 weeks before. So you know the first section. And if it's one of those contests that are everybody's mixed up together, and then they have prizes for the most successful first section, second section, third section, fourth section band, you've got a rough idea then straight away that if somebody comes and plays music for Jock Thompson, then they're probably a fourth section band. So yeah. So what do you do? And as an MD, and this is why I want to pick Duncan's brains about this, how much use do you get out of an area piece? Do you do that, or do you try and immediately move on to something else so that they're continually working and improving their knowledge of repertoire and working on a new piece straight away? I'll just read through a couple of these points, then we can start and we can let Duncan loose on it. Is the purpose for an on-choice test piece to indulge the conductor on a favourite test piece? Because I've seen that a few times, and sometimes you come a cropper. Or is it just so that maybe the band can say, oh yeah, we performed that piece last year at the such and such a contest, even if it might have been a bit of a car crash? Yeah, and I've seen that on social media a few times where bands have said, they've played such and such a piece, and you think, well, really, you're telling me you're a second section band, but you're trying to play you know, Essence of Time or something. You know, it just doesn't match up. Or, and this is where I think it should be, is it trying to move the development of the band on incrementally by playing something that they can make a really good job of, both technically and musically, and which shows a certain standard of compositional competence beyond being instantly exciting and superficial. So you're trying to pick test pieces that are well written as well. Duncan, let's let you loose on it.
Okay, that's really interesting what you've said there. But I just want to be. This is quite general what I want to say, really. I think the area contest has a lot to answer for, in the sense of the winning bands go away, you know, they're happy, you know, they're on top of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other bands, though, think to themselves, well, you know, all right, we've lost out on London, we've lost out on Cheltenham. Why don't we try and make it up? Now, sometimes the bands want to just, you know, continue contesting after contesting after contest. Some bands would rather wait and, you know, do a good concert in the summer, and then, you know, and then progress a bit later. When it comes to finding a test piece, now this is really interesting. I've always thought that choosing a test piece depends on the band you've got.
Okay.
Are you going to choose the test piece with a lovely cornet soloing if your solo cornet is not quite as lyrical as he or she should be? Is she more technical?
Right.
He or she are the more technical. Have you got a euphonium player who can play lyrical? Have you got a euphonium player who can do both? Have you got soloists who can do things? You know, I really think you've got to look at your band before you even think of a test piece.
That's interesting. I've only ever done one in the lower sections. Well, I've done a couple, but one that sticks out in my mind. I had a Enderby band in the Midlands, and they were at the point. Another good result of the area, and they would have gone up to the championship. So at Leicester Contest, I thought to myself, right, look at my soloists. I worked out I had good trombone player, good horn player, good cornet player, and so on. So I wanted to test them players because obviously there was a chance they were going to go up, and I plumped for London Overture because it's got the cadenza section in. Now, I was taking a risk, but I felt that them players needed testing. So it was done more for a work in progress than vanity, so to speak. From a conducting point of view, I happen to really enjoy that piece anyway. But it certainly helped develop that band. But I've had other times when I picked dancers and arias, and it was a disaster from start to finish. They just really struggled with it, so I had to think again halfway through the prep.
When you picked dances and arias, was that your choice or the band's choice?
It was I've got to be honest. It was one of my choices.
Okay.
Thinking the band were better than they were until we got down to the nooks and crannies of it, and I had to reevaluate that situation. So that was the dancers and arias came before London Overture. So having got it wrong once, I made sure I didn't get it wrong twice.
Was that just you pushing them on to try them out, or was that with a view to actually doing it at the contest? Because that's another thing I was going to ask Duncan about, especially, was a lot of bands tend to sort of they seem to pick a test piece that they're going to do, and then that's it. And not many bands that I know of get a succession of test pieces out to try just to improve things like reading and understanding and playing different styles of music, they seem to think that that's a waste of time because they're not actually going to be playing these pieces. Does that make sense? So that they'll go from an area piece into choosing, hopefully, the on-choice test piece that they're going to tackle. But they don't try out other pieces just to say, right, for the next 4 rehearsals, we're going to work up, whatever piece you want to name, and then you're going to put it away in the cupboard. You're just going to use it as training. Now,
yeah, well, on this occasion, Sandy, it was purely my vanity, so I came a cropper.
Okay.
Now, as a player, I obviously sat in lots of bands where conductors are getting pieces out just to run through them. And it drives me mad because I want to work on them. I want to get to know them properly. So just for a bit of sight reading, I hate that exercise personally. I like to get to work on them. But going back to the dancing arias, we ditched that halfway through the prep and then chose another piece that was a bit more accessible. But on the London Overture, I took my time. In fact, I think I spoke to you about it, Sandy, a bit.
You did.
And, just made sure that I picked the correct piece because, I just didn't want to fall for it again. And we drew number 1 and came second. So I was quite pleased.
That's fantastic. I just wanted to come back a little bit. So we said we'll look at the soloists, and then I think it's really important that conductors look at themselves, because if you're going to choose a piece, you're going to make sure you're on top of it as well, because you're asking the band to be on top of it.
Yeah,
but you've got to be on top of it as well. And if you choose a piece, you've got to have done some homework before you get there, because I think learning it with the band is good. You're going to have trouble, I think, at an own choice contest. You've got to be absolutely clued up in what you're doing.
Yeah.
I also think as well, you've got to think, right, am I going to choose a piece, like you say, to stretch the band? Well, I always say to everybody, well, just be careful with that, because at the end of the day, you go into a contest, and a contest is judged on all the basics, technique, sound. It's judged on all the basics. And if you can't put all those basics there for about 13 minutes, maybe that's not the right piece. I also think you need to be really careful with the length of piece, because I certainly think in the lower sections, a piece what is about 15, 16 minutes might be a bit long for a lower section band. And then, of course, you get the crit of a judge saying, "Oh, that was a very tired performance." Because for me, you've got to put serious work in. You've got to put, no matter what test piece you do, you've got to treat it really seriously, as hard as the areas. I think you've got to put a lot of work in. And I'm not so sure that between your summer concerts and September, you've got enough time.
Right. I mean, you when you're on there about the length of piece as well, I think bands tend to forget this as well. And I know we've talked about this, Duncan, on the music panel thing, about it's not just about performing a piece for a certain length of time. It's about especially the final week or two's rehearsals on that, and the toll that piece takes on lips and mentally as well. That it can take a whole, it can take a real toll on players and the conductor as well. I think you've got to take that into consideration as well. You know.
Can I just throw something in? Is a test piece easier to adjudicate a set test piece than an own choice?
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
Right.
You're judging apples with apples, aren't you?
Yeah, I think a set test piece is definitely easier. Yes. However, in the lower sections, for an experienced adjudicator who knows the lower sections, I really think you should. I believe that if you're a good adjudicator, you should be able to pick out a quality band at the top end. But I also think it applies to the lower end as well. You should be able to pick out a quality, lower section band who's worked hard and they've got most things right. They might not have everything right, but they've got most things right.
So with as much as on a set test piece, as much as basics are the judging points, it is also true of the own choice. As a player, I've only ever had experience own choice at the European.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you never do them when you were a kid? I mean, I remember being at Whitburn. We used to do things at the time. There was a contest called the Edinburgh Charities, which was it was in December, early December each year, and there was about 30 bands all mucked in from championship to fourth. So you could be drawn against next to a 4-section band or a 3rd-section band. They could be drawn next to you, and you played your piece and they played theirs, and then they sorted it out as best. I can remember Jeffrey Brand judging one of those ones. Back into the 70s,
we were never involved in them sort of contests.
Okay.
No, right. So it was quite new to me.
Really?
When I started conducting, it was a complete, obviously this. I was taking a 1st-section band, so I had to really be careful evaluating what was right, what was wrong,
right,
and the best way to approach it. Hence why we had lots of conversations, Sandy, at that time.
Yeah, I mean, my take on the thing, set test piece thing is quite straightforward in as much as you've all got the same piece, right? Whatever the piece is, you know that you have to try and play that specific piece better than anyone else to the best of your ability. So if you've got a big flugel solo, you make the most of it. If you've got a good flugel player, your quid's in. If you've got a flugel player that needs a bit of coaxing through, you've got to do that as well. So it's straightforward in as much as it's easy to compare like with like. When you get an on-choice test piece contest to adjudicate, there are so many other factors. But the way I've always tried to do it is that I think it's quite legitimate to think as an adjudicator that if you go into an own choice contest, I would expect a high standard of execution, both technically and musically, from every band, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not being say it was a set test piece, right? And you might not have a good flugel. Sorry, flugel players. I'm just using it as an example. You'll do the best you can with the flugel player you've got. If you are choosing a test piece for a big flugel solo and you don't have a flugel player, then that's your fault. Yeah?
Yep.
And so you would obviously pick a piece that features your strengths and tries maybe to a certain extent disguise your weaknesses. So I would say if you've chosen the test piece, I don't think there's much excuse for playing which doesn't show very secure levels of technical assurance. Would that be fair, Duncan?
I think that is fair. And then you've got to think about the band who chooses a piece, what I would call a sensible choice. Now, this sensible choice might be a little easier than some of the pieces you've heard. And then you've got to think to yourself, right, where would you put this particular performance? So I suppose the criteria here is, did you hear everything right? Did you, was soloist accurate? Was the technique of the playing good? Now sometimes I'm going to be honest, an easier piece played well in the past. I put it first.
Okay.
Because I feel that the harder piece, there was just too much was going wrong in it, and there wasn't enough, what would say to me, all right, this band is really trying and it's done really well. There's too much gone wrong for me to put it in front of a band who's played really well an easier piece.
Well, that was going to be my next question, Duncan, and you've started that. So how do you differentiate the different levels of test pieces within the same contest? So you've just addressed that, haven't you, really? You would go for a slightly easier piece, played better.
I always think to myself, right, this is where research comes in. A little bit of research comes in. Mm-hmm. You might want to play a piece. You might have a title in your mind, and then you think to yourself, well, what level was this? So you do a little bit of research to find out what level this is. Now, if it was the old second section piece, a piece from the old second section, I might think to myself, right, if I was in section 2 now, would I play that piece? Because it might be that little bit too difficult.
Okay.
Or I look at that piece, and I maybe, Grezzy, I know you don't always like this, but I'll get this piece out and have a go at it. Now, sometimes having a go at a piece can give you a view straight away. Because what I'd like to do sometimes is make sure that the band enjoy the piece as well. So on this run through, you can gauge a little bit if the band, will like it, if the band will get through. I don't always think it should be my choice on an home choice. Sometimes I like to open it up, and I have opened it up to the band, especially if the band is, in the first section on the championship section. Because remember, you've got to get those players to play for you, and I really do think on an home choice test piece, you've got to get them to play for you. An area piece, they have to do that piece. They don't have a choice.
Okay.
Mm. So that's the way I look at it.
So this is Judicator's head on now, Duncan, right?
Yep.
I think that bands should expect an adjudicator, whoever he or she is, who is very well read in regards to repertoire for an own choice test piece contest, not just the stuff they've been acquainted with through set test piece contests. So I would expect any adjudicator who's doing own choice test piece to have a vast knowledge of repertoire, because what you don't want to have is a judge who is easily swayed by what is perceived to be his or her favourite pieces. Play this for them because they like this, that sort of thing. I think that you would expect a good judge of an own choice test piece contest to have a vast, wide range of knowledge about repertoire. Is that fair?
I think that is very fair. Now, sometimes you get situations where contest promoters don't send you the pieces. You do it on the day. Now, that can be risky.
Mm-hmm.
I personally would ask for, if I was doing an own choice test piece, I would try and ask for the scores at least a couple of weeks before the contest.
Yeah.
I also think it's important that, yes, you do your research. You know, if you've got a wide knowledge, that's not a problem. But you need to do your research because, you know, some of these older pieces, what are not as well known to people now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, are pieces from abroad. Now,
Yeah.
they can trip you up quite easily. Some of these pieces from abroad, like you say, they come on and they're all, you know, it's all flashy, you know, pyrotechnics, you know, all sorts. But yet, you know, it's a lower section piece. You've got to be careful that you're not putting a third section piece by, I don't know, some good composers out there. I don't know, Oliver Westby. You know, if you
Okay.
don't know Oliver Westby, you might end up getting yourself into trouble here because you might put that above, you know, a better band. So like you say, you've got to know your repertoire, and you've got to put some work in.
Do you think that it
So
might put? Sorry. Do you think it might put conductors off choosing? How can we put it? Repertoire that's, you know, they might want to push the boat out a bit and do something slightly different. Do you think that it might stop them doing that if they think the judge hasn't heard this piece before or might not be aware of it?
Oh, now that is a difficult one. Now, from my point of view, I can only talk from my point of view here now. If you bring a piece in front of me what I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't had time to analyse it or anything, that's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for me because if I don't know the piece, it becomes that little bit harder to judge. And really, once again, I could only judge on what I hear.
Okay.
So, you know, if the basics are
So you're going right back to basics at that point, Duncan, aren't you?
That's right. You're going back to basics because if I don't know the piece and it's presented to me, like I say, I can only judge it on what I hear.
So the very least you would look for from contest organisers then is that at least you have a list of pieces that are going to be performed. Yeah, an alphabetical list by composer or piece or whatever. It doesn't matter, you know, so that you can acquaint yourself with anything new. I mean, ideally, you want the scores. You know, you might be able to get them sent on a PDF or something to, you know, so you can get, you know, sort of, you know, get to know these pieces then. But do you think that sometimes that this restricts choices because people are trying to play safe?
I don't think it should restrict choices, but I think it's really important that if you're going to go to an home choice contest, you've got to be as prepared as going to the area. It's not, you know, it can't be, you know, I suppose for want of a better word, it can't be a run out for something. You know, if it's going to be a run out for something, you've got to expect you're not going to win.
Well, I mean, I have heard people say, yeah, we wanted to try this piece. We knew we were really stretching it, but I just wanted to have a go to see what would happen. That seems to me that's a step too far then, isn't it? You know,
bonkers.
Yeah, it
well,
is a bit.
I don't think it's you know, if you can't get through the piece or you've got some really bad areas of a piece, why are you going out to show it to everybody?
Yeah,
you're torturing everybody, including yourself.
I don't understand that. You know, for me, if you haven't got some chance of winning, I wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, you know, and this is where I think this discussion is quite pertinent because I have heard in various occasions in sort of local test piece contest, own choice stuff, bands that have way overstretched themselves, and you think, what the hell has just happened? I'll give you one example, right? and I won't mention the contest.
I remember the phone call afterwards.
Yeah. I was at one, and just as an audience member, I haven't judged it before, but I just went as an audience member, and there was a second section band came on and attempted to play Connotations by Edward Gregson.
Gee.
Right? Now, they were second section, okay? It was memorable in all the wrong ways. Poor band. They had a poor young horn player, a girl. Her feet were swinging on the chair. I could see her legs from where I was sat, and she's so, I don't know what age she must have been, 12 maybe, I don't know. And it got to the cadenza bit, and the poor girl hadn't a chance. And it got to the big ending, and the conductor it was almost like he had headphones in and he was conducting, Black Dyke in the 1970s or something, playing Connotations, It really was. And he had these big sweeping gestures, like he was, I don't know, Herbert von Karajan or something, and the poor band were collapsing in a heap round him. And I thought, what the hell is the point in that? Because that, for a start, I really felt for the young horn player, because she didn't have a hope of playing this. And it felt to me that was an indulgence from the conductor, who probably loved Connotations to bits and just fancied doing it. But I dread to think how that set back some of the players in that band, because they could not get a sniff at it. And I just worry that some of these sort of car crash examples cause more harm than good. Duncan, have you any examples from your adjudicating experience of witnessing that in the box? Pieces that have just absolutely decimated a band because they've been far too hard.
I don't think I've had that many recently, because everybody knows my views on home choice test pieces. Most people know that it's, and I've said this God knows how many times to organisers and to bands who I've been to. Play a piece, what you can play a piece, what you can put some work in, because it's not just about playing the piece. You've got to put a lot of work in. You've got to put it all on the basics. You've got to go there thoroughly prepared.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, don't go. Don't waste your money, because you will get beat. I've made that known for many years. I'm going to tell you just a very quick story about myself. I can remember my first home choice test piece. Now, that home choice test piece was, oh my God, I've forgotten, Les Preludes, the Rimmer Les Preludes, right? And I had a band at that particular time called the Warren Band.
Yeah.
And we went to a contest in Dronfield, of all places, near Sheffield. I've only ever been there once as a judge, and I remember playing this piece, and everything was going well. And then at the end, you've got that little bit where it goes, I decided, my own indulgence, to go and I remember the judge standing on stage and he said, "There's a band today thrown the test piece, they've thrown the test piece section away."
Right.
Because something must have happened to the conductor's hands, because he went crazy for about 20 bars. And that judge at the time was Jeff Whitton.
Oh dear.
And he said, and
He wouldn't hold back, wouldn't Jeff?
said, no, it was. He said, whoever it was went crazy. And unfortunately, you've got second. I just remember him saying it. And I thought, I just walked out in disgust.
Dear me. Simon, have you got any examples from your experience of bands overstretching themselves in these sort of conditions?
I regularly go for a listen, you know, to local contests. One of my favourites is Leicester Contest.
Yeah.
And I've heard, I mean, I played with YBS on Tallis Variations, and it's one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever played.
Yeah.
And it's all about touch. And you get a lot of first section bands trying to play it. And they're great at the loud bits. But when it gets to the real touch playing, they just leave me cold. You know, you think you need to listen to some recordings to see what that really should be like. You know, and they get through it, and it always leaves them cold because it's got a quiet ending. But there's just so many bands. Oh, I heard A Journey into Freedom, and it set off fast, and it got faster and faster and faster, to the point where they're just falling over themselves.
Control. Yeah. But don't you think
that's about control from the middle as much. Sorry?
Yeah, it is. But don't you think that's a thing about when bands think they've played pieces, and what they're actually saying is we've negotiated our way from top left to bottom right, and sort of got a semblance of it, but there's no music involved. It's just a sort of a bit of a rough technical exercise, but not a lot of music, you know. Yeah. And I think that's where bands are picking some of these pieces that are just a step too far.
Well, do you think the advent of good recordings has something to do with that? Because everybody now can go on YouTube. They've got some people will have hundreds of CDs of all these pieces, you know. So they take a CD out. Usually, that CD is done by you know, one of the top bands, and people think they can automatically play it, or conductors. Some conductors think, oh yeah, my band can play that.
Well, I mean that feeds
to copy it.
Yeah, now that feeds into what you and I do on this music panel about, because we've sat together numerous times, and we have a big list of things we've made up, and we think, right, okay, let's have a listen to this, and all we need to do is look it up on YouTube, and we'll find half a dozen recordings of it, right? And we can get an idea. Yep. And it's often better to listen to, you know, a lower section band play it at their own contest than it is to listen to a Black Dyke or a Corey to play it, because they make it sound so straightforward. The other thing that happens again, which I am sort of dead against, is when they announce regional pieces and they have a CD or downloads now of whatever the area test piece is going to be, then that is inevitably played by, it's normally either Dyke or Corey, right? Two very, very good bands. And bands then go to the area contest, and they expect the judges to want to hear the exact carbon copy of the interpretation that Black Dyke or Corey gave to that piece on the regional CD. You've heard it umpteen times. I don't know why we didn't get it wrong. We played it like Dyke did on the CD. You know, well, that's only one way of doing things. And people, they just think, I'll copy that and I'll be quids in. You know, that's how Dyke did it, I'll do it like that. And it doesn't work like that, does it? You've got to work your own interpretation, your own musical take on things. I've noticed that a lot, that sort of happens, where bands do that sort of thing. And
it happened in the first section at Yorkshire this year. There's a band who came low down, and I could tell from what the conductor were trying to conduct, but his band couldn't play, was what he'd heard on a CD.
Right. Okay.
It was
Yeah,
it was obvious.
Yeah.
He was trying to create some sort of picture that just didn't exist in his band.
Right. I mean, there was something recently on because strangely, Duncan and I, we've been up to our necks in next year's area pieces, and there was a thread on the board bandsman Facebook thing asking, right, folks, what do you fancy for the areas 2025? And then there was, I think there's about 190 comments. So I went through it for a look, and it is very interesting, right? You get the usual nonsense like hootenanny, you think, oh yeah, ha ha, brilliant. Or you get choices based on the age of a piece. We want something new, and then other people say we want something old. Well, it doesn't matter. It's either good or bad. It's not old and new. That's crap. But I'll give you a list here. I made a little list.
But this actually relates to own choice test pieces.
It does.
The way that people are thinking.
So I made a list of, and I've just called them. I've scribbled them down here on a bit of paper. Out of step choices I've put, right? So these are pieces where I think people are asking for stuff. I've got to assume that these people are genuine, right? That this is what they want for whatever reason, right? So I'll just read you the list, right? So these are maybe about 7 or 8 that I think are out of step, okay? Dances and arias for first section.
No chance.
Le Roi d'East for second section. Triumphant Rhapsody for second section. These are good. Variations on Laudate Dominum, Eddie's piece, Eddie Gregson, for fourth section.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Somebody else is asking for, can we have something harder for the fourth section, like Oceans or Aeronauts for the fourth section, right? Here's another one, Plantagenets for third section.
Oh dear.
Couldn't play it in second section.
This is a good one. Kenilworth for the fourth section.
Oh.
And then this is another one, right? Jazz by Philip Wilby for the first section.
Oh.
Jeez. But this is an example of how I presume most of these are players. Do
they just fancy? Are they just fancying a flash through these pieces? I don't know.
When I were a youngster, and I dare say you two guys, I used to be practicing and listening to LPs as it was in the day, and think, oh, I'd love to play that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them, funny enough, were Connotations. I absolutely adored that piece. And I used to go up to my little Queensbury band, and do you remember Andy Owenson?
Yeah,
I used to say, Mr. Owenson, can we get Connotations out? And I get a clip round the ear.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of that. People just fancy these pieces and want to go at them. Here's another one for you. This is the final one, right? And there's a couple of comments about this piece, right? And somebody put, it's only a matter of time until Year of the Dragon is used as first section.
No chance.
Right?
No.
And then somebody else has put, far too many first section bands attempt Year of the Dragon, in my opinion. This is not my opinion, this is the guy writing this. Far too many first section bands attempt Year of the Dragon, in my opinion, for it to still be considered as top section. Now, to me, that's just absolute nonsense. Year of the Dragon. Right?
I remember Sleepless Nights in 1986 with Esford on that.
I mean, forget the middle movement, right? Yeah. Which is astonishingly hard to play properly.
Yeah.
But just the technical aspects of the outer two movements. First section. And this is a thing that happens a lot, where you get, because it's been played by first section bands, that this idea that a piece is now demoted, if you want to put it like that. I don't consider it that, but a lot of people, excuse me, seem to, that it's sort of demoted into the first section somehow, and it can't be used in the top section, because there's a lot of pieces that we all know that we don't really know what to do with. Where do they go? So, for instance, just think off the top of my head, a piece like Energy, Robert Simpson's Energy, where does that go these days?
Stays where it is.
Championship section.
A championship section. It is a championship section piece, but it's only 9 minutes long, and it's a nightmare piece. A nightmare piece to play.
I'll vouch for that.
Yeah, I mean, I've recorded it a couple of times.
The way I look at this is there have been going back to panels now. Panels in the past, what have had the choices in their hands.
Yeah.
And I would say, have they thought about them properly? I don't know. And I put the same question to conductors. Do conductors think carefully about, the pieces they choose, for home choice contests? For me, it's quite simple. Look for something what suits your band.
Right.
Make sure
Absolutely.
you, as a conductor, can actually conduct it properly and understands, what you're doing. Also, we've got to think about now our bands, are they as good as they used to be? Because some of these pieces are harder than you think. And do we need tests? And the last little thing here is, does every piece you use have to have multiple percussion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Just a quick in, Sandy. You mentioned Laudate Dominum.
Yeah.
Now, what I've heard over the last couple of years is I don't consider Laudate Dominum a test piece. And stuff like Fire in the Blood, is that a test piece? You know what I mean? I'm sure that they were composed for different reasons.
Both those pieces you've mentioned, I personally don't think are strong enough as test pieces.
Exactly, that's where I'm coming to.
Well, I don't think they're strong enough.
Laudate Dominum's hard.
Sorry, Simon.
Laudate Dominum's a struggle, but I don't know. I just don't think that there's enough in the other one, the Fire in the Blood.
You're on about a type of music that is quite superficially exciting and energetic.
Yeah.
What does it stand up against some classic writing, right?
No.
Of the sort of Vinter, Eric Ball type, Philip Spark stuff.
The bands might play it in an own choice contest, Sandy, and get a great clap.
Yeah, because it's that sort of piece. That's what those pieces were designed.
But when you delve into it,
first or second half finishers.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, guys, you've got to remember that it is a test piece. No, it is a contest. Now, if that band plays it really well, but another band plays as well with, I don't know, I've got to be careful here, a slightly, I'm going to say better piece, for me, probably going to win.
I think you're right. I think there are certain...
you've got to be honest. You've got to be honest.
There is. It's nothing to do with having favourite pieces or anything. It's to do with going back to this idea of quality control when picking set test pieces, right? There is there are pieces which show their compositional strength and nous that stick out more than some others because they're just not as well composed. The source material is not as good. The scoring's not as good. The development of the material is not as good. Some pieces are just better than others, and it's nothing to do with having favourite things. And there has been quite a lot of music in the recent past, and I would say the last 15, 20 years, that is quite superficial.
You see, at this contest,
quite easy to put together, and easy. Let's say it's easier to put together than a piece like High Peak.
Yeah.
Okay.
At this contest I'm on about,
consistent tempo. Yeah.
The crowd went wild. They loved it, and the players, because it was so, had got a feel good thing in it. You know.
Yeah.
These types of events, the band thought they'd done really well. And when I got in the bar with them, and they were all asking me, "What did you think to that then?" Well, I'm sorry, but you won't get much today. They looked at you, gone out. Luckily, the judge was a good judge and made sure that it was the correct result.
Yeah.
How I saw it, I just felt that it was a bit, shallow.
I get the fact that some of these pieces do sound superficially exciting, right?
Yeah.
And I really do get the fact that a band rehearses quite intensely for a contest, and they've put all their heart and soul into it. You see it at area contests all the time, and they put their heart and soul into it, and there is a release of adrenaline at the end of a performance where it's the relief of getting there, it's the camaraderie, it's all of that put together, and there can be quite visceral responses from within the band and their supporters to a performance. And I get all that, but as judges you have to see a bit more in it than just the superficial, and I think just that quality pieces will always come to the top, and it's not about having favourite pieces, it's about having music of real quality. I think it is discernible. I think you can tell which pieces are well composed and which aren't, or which are a bit more superficial.
Just to move this discussion on, can we come to a conclusion with a few final thoughts to help the listeners when they're choosing an unchoice test piece? Duncan?
Well, go on, sorry.
No, on you go, Duncan. Yeah.
Okay. I suppose I'm going to put my adjudicator's head on now.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose if you're going to go to a contest, I think it's important that you play a piece what you can play. This is really simple stuff, this. A piece what you can play, a piece what does show off your soloist. It doesn't make it an arduous job, just makes it fun. I also think, please look at the basics in the lower sections. It's not just about playing a piece. It's about band training. It's like I say, and it doesn't matter what piece it is. Please band train. The best lower section bands do that, and then it becomes that little bit easier when you get to the top section, because I still firmly believe, and this will be controversial what I'm going to say now, that top bands still need band training.
Oh, absolutely, Duncan. You bang on there. Yeah.
Would it be fair to say, Duncan, that you're on about playing pieces that you can play? We're not just talking the technical aspect of getting the notes in. We're talking about making music as well, aren't we? Especially in solo lines and things like that. So that you've picked a piece that it's not just a case of players hanging on by the skin of their teeth to get through things and say, yeah, we performed X, Y, and Z. It's about, did those players deliver a musical take on their bit of the piece. You know, the 16-bar flugel solo or whatever it happens to be. You're talking about making music as well, aren't you? So it's not just a case of, it's the same as you stand up and play a solo, right? It's not just a case of hanging on by the skin of your teeth to play something. You have to be able to make music as well. Same with the solos in a test piece. So if you're a conductor picking a piece, you want to give your soloist the chance to show what they can do musically.
You've got to communicate with your audience, i.e., your audience and the judge, in a really positive way, not in a oh dear way.
Yeah, I think there's a huge difference between just getting through a piece.
Absolutely.
And performing one, and I think it's a difficult one sometimes for people to comprehend. Yeah, they want something that pushes them technically, and they see technique as being fast notes. And technique is the middle movement of Year of the Dragon.
Yep.
You know, it's not. We're not talking about all the semis in the last movement or whatever else. We're talking technical ability is being able to play that triple piano passage at triple piano with everyone playing, no one turning the blooming bells in and putting practice mutes in and dusters up the bells and stuff, playing it properly. That's technique. Is playing pianissimo, but a lot of people don't associate that with technique, do they?
No.
So I would advocate the same as Duncan, that you're looking for a band that can make music, not just playing notes.
Getting through the piece is one thing, but making music is usually a winner.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, and I think you can do that with a slightly easier piece and make more music.
So that's great. Duncan, it's been a massive pleasure for us to have you on here with your recent award of the MBE. Once again, congratulations from us. And no matter what you say, we believe it's thoroughly deserved. So we'd just like to thank our listeners for tuning in again. And if you've got any comments, please send your comments into smithandgrezzy@gmail.com, and we'll endeavour to get back to you in one way or another, or discuss them on future podcasts. So, till the next time on Smith and Grezzy's Big Chat Brass, thank you all for listening.